how do you expect the Malaysian economy to bode for the remaining of the year, especially considering the current market conditions?
When we look at the Malaysian economy, 2024 was a very good year where Malaysia's GDP grew 5.1%. In fact, we expect the momentum to continue going into 2025, especially the early part, and with domestic demand continue to hold up due to steady private consumption and as well as investment growth. But however, as we all know, after the implementation of the tariff, the expectation going especially into the second half of the year would be for some economic slowdown. The view that we are taking here is that looking at the GDP components, we expect private consumption to continue to hold up in the first half going into the second half, because as we all know, in the budget 2025 announcement, Prime Minister has unveiled a series of stimulus that would continue to support domestic demand and also in terms of private consumption. But however, I think the downside risk here, looking at the GDP component again, is on private investment. Here, the expectation, the uncertainty of the possibility of a global recession will lead to manufacturers, investors holding back on their investment plan. And that, I think, will slow down on the investment growth in Malaysia. But having said that, again, when we look at the economy as a whole, domestic demand will continue to stay healthy, and therefore our expectation would be for Malaysia economy to hold up in the region of 4 to 4.5%. In line of that, we are downgrading our GDP growth forecast from the current 5.2%, partly to take into consideration the implications, the negative implication from the tariff, especially on the investment front. But nevertheless, when we look at exports and imports, Malaysia, we do have a very diversified export market. We are not just exporting to the US, and therefore, while most countries in the world will be affected by tariff, but we do not expect a collapse in export growth going into the second half of the year, because there are exports that will continue to benefit from other export markets. And on the investment front, even though I guided earlier that there could be some postponement, delay, but we are also continuing to see investment continue to be carried out. And that's where, Chi Wei, when you talk about some of the investments that will continue to, benefit Malaysia's in the second half of the year.
We do expect the data center investments to continue to come in because a lot of these big tech companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, as well as Oracle has committed to expand their data centers as well as AI kind of businesses in Malaysia. And this, maybe they may delay the decisions, but I think they are still trying to build the market and using Malaysia as a hub for a lot of these cloud services, and that would continue. There are also a lot of these committed investments by multinationals, including some Chinese companies, that likely will continue because Malaysia provides the integrated ecosystem and supply chain for especially like semiconductors, as well as a lot of these components for like solar energy generation, for example.
From a macro perspective, I think it's important for the Malaysian government to study the possible impact from the tariff. I think the ultimate goal is to stabilize market sentiment, as well as continue to provide some support in terms of monetary policy as well as fiscal policy. But from our perspective is in view of the macroeconomic slowdown, many countries in the world are already engaging in some sort of fiscal support. At the same time, monetary policy easing. In the context of Malaysia, while current scenario doesn't really warrant for a monetary policy easing where Bank Negara cut interest rate, and similarly for the federal government to introduce fiscal stimulus measures. But if the economy continue to slow going into the second half of the year, my view here is that the first step should be on the monetary policy easing, because this is a preemptive measure by the central bank to ensure positive sentiment continues. And if need be, fiscal stimulus will have to come, but it will be at a later stage. So from that perspective, what we are saying here is that in view of what's going on due to tariff, government around the world, including Malaysia, may have to take both fiscal stimulus as well as monetary policy support.